Hi, welcome back to this AGON Institute course on the models of sports, recreation, and fitness ministries. We're in a series of looking back at some historical models, some people and institutions and missions and ministries that were doing sports, rec, and fitness ministries in bygone eras. And what is it that we can learn from them? What is it that they have modeled for us? And as you can imagine, models give us good things. They also give us some problematic things. And we're going to try to make those differentiations with us today. If you're taking this for Berkeley College or any other university, as you know, you're going to need to be taking exam quality notes. And if you're taking it for certification or for your own pleasure, nothing is really needed other than just letting us know for the certification that you've watched it and a couple of the great highlights of the course for you. Well, we're moving on historically, but we're still in that late 1800s, early 1900s period of that muscular Christian era that we have talked about. We're going to talk today about Billy Sunday. What a great name for a world evangelist that Billy was. Billy Sunday grew up just after, actually was born during the middle of the Civil War, the American Civil War, 1862. And never really knew his dad. His dad then left to go fight in the Civil War and never came back. This left he and his mother and his two siblings, and they were very much in poverty. They were impoverished as a result of Dad being gone and not being able to provide for the family. The mother did what she could. She loved her children. She was a person of deep faith, but ended up having to give both of the boys up for adoption. And what she then did was try to care for them in a distant kind of way. But as you can imagine, Billy grew up kind of rough and tumble. Now, you're seeing Billy in a baseball uniform, and it's because he was a world-class baseball player. He started playing on the sandlots in his local area, and he was noticed by the manager of the Chicago White Sox, the very famous Cap Anson. And Billy became really one of the most premier ball players of the era. He held the stolen base record longer than did Ty Cobb, who was renowned in that era as the premier base stealer. A fleet-footed outfielder, Billy was quite an athlete. He was so fast that Cap Anson, wherever they would play, wherever the White Sox would play, Cap would take Billy and take him to wherever the local bookie was and say, my man can outrace anybody. And they won a lot of money on the bets that they wagered on whether or not Billy could beat the fastest man in that community. He was so fast that one time Cap Anson even had him race against a horse and bet against him to beat the horse. And he did for the first 100 yards or so. But then the horse got up to speed and quickly passed Billy. Now, why were they having to do all that? Well, if you remember anything about the White Sox of that era, who threw the World Series, 8 Men Out, there was the movie, and the historical vibes all come up that Charles Comiskey just didn't want to pay those guys very much, and they were living on a shoestring, so to speak. So Billy was part of that era. He knew that rough and tumble side of life. One day when he was in Chicago, they had stopped playing ball, for the day, and he and some of his partners went down to the local pub, the local bar, and it was a warm day, and Billy kind of took his brewski outside and was leaning up against the wall, the outside wall, and the sounds of these hymns started to waft through the area. Hymns meaning those classical old religious songs that he had heard his mama sing to him as a child. Those of you that are familiar with the Salvation Army know that this was kind of what was happening. This was a group like the Salvation Army playing brass instruments and singing these great old Christian hymns. Billy's remembrances came back. It brought these memories back to him about his mama. He found where the music was coming from. He actually went and followed that band back to their rescue mission. And it was there that he gave his life to Jesus Christ. And it led him to believe that he should not play on Sundays. Pro sports in those days were playing on Sundays, and he said, no, I'm not going to do that. And he was such a good ball player that they said, we'll give you 1 day off. We want you for the other 6. There in of itself is probably a model for some of our pro athletes of today. And Billy was known for this. And rather than going to the ballpark on Sunday to play, he would go to the local YMCA and began to do what he called Billy's Sundays, athletic Sundays, where he would give his testimony. And this is a model that is still used today about using what we call a proclamation platform for the proclamation, verbal proclamation of the gospel. Nothing wrong with that. It's still effective in many ways. Now, we'll evaluate this in a little while, but just know that this kind of model is not new. It's hundreds of years old that people were doing this. Well, Billy then was so enamored of the YMCA and became disenchanted with professional sports to the level that he said, I'm going to leave professional sports and I'm going to go work for the YMCA. And in that day and age, the YMCA's sole purpose was to lead young men into a relationship with Jesus Christ. So Billy was contemplating this, and he asked for a sign from God. Should he continue playing ball? Should he go into ministry? When he got his sign, Billy, being an all-or-nothing person, went totally to the Y, left baseball. And he began training with the Y, and he worked for it for many years. Now, you can see on the slide that he left a fairly lucrative $500 a month in that day and age for $83 a month. He really did make a sacrifice. Now, Billy started to work in a Y and was trained in it, and he was very, very committed to this. But he also wanted something more. Being a professional athlete, he was, in many respects, an entertainer. And so he kind of gravitated towards that. And some of the slides that will come on the screen for you will show some of his antics. He would jump up on the pulpit as he began to preach certain places. He literally would come running across the stage and slide like he was sliding into second base. And he would draw some athletic connections for people. Well, he started working for a man by the name of Wilbur Chapman. Wilbur was a traveling evangelist of the day. This was in the age of D.L. Moody, and Moody was like the world-renowned guy who was drawing tens of thousands of people. Chapman, not so many, but still very effective, particularly in the Midwestern states of the United States. Well, when Chapman resigned, and Billy had been doing all of his front work, meaning he would go in all these cities and set things up and get things organized, Chapman realized that Billy had a real talent. He was gifted of God. He was ordained of God. And he said, Billy, you're the guy that's an heir apparent here. So Billy said, okay, I'm going to take that on. And he took over the Chapman revivals that moved from city to city. And this led him from those smaller Midwestern towns into the larger metropolitan areas. And during this time, and all through the next few decades, Billy Sunday preached to more people than anybody else had ever preached to. Literally millions of people. Using what we call, again, that platform proclamation. And using his fame, if you will, his notoriety as this all-star level baseball player to attract crowds. He was, in fact, then the heir apparent to D.L. Moody. And when Moody passed on and was called to heaven, Billy Sunday was the man that really replaced D.L. Moody. Now, we're going to come back in our next segment, and we're going to hear a little bit more about Sunday's evangelistic ministry. And then we're going to talk about some deeper models. We're going to talk about some of these things that we've talked about, the proclamation, the platform proclamation, the mega event. And we're going to make some evaluations of some of these things. And we're going to try to crystal clear it for everyone on this series with us about how you can develop your own model in the 21st century for sports, rec, and fitness ministries. I'm Dr. Greg Linville, and on behalf of the AGON Institute, thanks for tuning in here.